It's one of those weeks where your whole week is going to feel maybe a little wonky if you had some time off. But we're glad that you're with us here on this Tuesday, the 27th of May. We wanted to catch up with what's been going on to the north and the east of us, just north of Duluth, and the wildfires that have been burning now for a couple of weeks. So we've asked St. Louis County Sheriff Gordon Ramsay to come back on and chat with us and bring us up to speed. So it's good to see you, Sheriff. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi there. So this is the first time we've talked to you when you haven't been out in your squad, out and about. Are things kind of quieting down for you and your crew?
They've definitely wound down, and it is much different than it was 2 weeks ago, that's for sure. And even 1 week, the difference is much improved.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Let's start with kind of where we are now, over the weekend into today. How are things looking as far as containment and spread, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, containment is much higher. And when the Forest Service talks about containment, they don't mean really necessarily active fires that are still burning. They mean that they've got an entire perimeter around it. So it sometimes can be a little bit, for those of us that aren't in the fire business, a little bit questionable on, well, what do you mean? I don't see any smoke or anything like that. The fires are pretty much out. There's just smoldering that they're working on.
Okay. Yeah, that's an important differentiation to make, especially in those early days when we were talking about containment efforts and then the spread you mentioned about a week ago. Was that kind of when we started to get some of that weather that came in? And I'm guessing that's kind of what kind of fast forwarded things just a little bit more for you guys?
The Thursday, it'll be 2 weeks this coming Thursday. We were very close to looking at an evacuation for the city of Hoyt Lakes. And that, the population area there is a few thousand, which would have been significant. And we were probably about 15 minutes away from making that decision when the heavy rains came in and started. And it really was a blessing, and I think prevented that fire from spreading further. But wow. I've never been in a situation like that in my career. It was something that I hadn't experienced. And I know the community was very worried, but to have rain come in like that and have that kind of impact, it was pretty amazing to see.
I guess I didn't realize that it came that close. Those conversations and that decision making in those moments and leading up to that. I can't even imagine just the joint effort that it must take between different agencies. And what was that like to have to get to that place where you thought, boy, we're going to have to call this?
Sure, there was certain areas that when we knew the fire points that they got to, that we had to raise the level of awareness and change the evacuation status. And the winds that Thursday were much higher than initially predicted. There was gusts up in the 50s, and I think at one point on the North Shore there was a 70-mile-an-hour gust. So it was moving that fire quickly, and much quicker than anybody had thought. So we were really at that point of, do we pull the trigger on this or not? And as we were sitting around discussing that, we saw the rain kind of moving in that direction, and we were crossing our fingers that it wouldn't die down. Unfortunately, it didn't die down. Actually, it was heavier than anticipated too. So that really changed the trajectory of the fire and the evacuation, what we were going to do for evacuations.
My goodness. And yeah, it's such a tough balance to be able to communicate with people and let them know what's going on, but not, panic people, because it's a very serious situation that would have affected many people, but also you got to keep people calm and making smart decisions as well. So that's amazing. What has it been like to have sort of, we talked a little bit about the joint efforts and the different, the DNR and some of these different folks that have been involved, and having the crews coming from other parts of the country to come in and help battle this. What's that experience been like for you?
Well, the initial first few days of the fire was more local, with local officials from the DNR and Forest Service. And then after a few days, the experts in major fires arrived. And, they had experts that could explain how certain trees catch on fire and what they look like when they're green and on fire, and how much we should be concerned by that. It was fascinating to see the level of expertise that the Forest Service brought in. And it was fascinating for me as someone who grew up here, not knowing how some of these trees burn versus others and what we need to be cautious of. And so that was, the expertise that came in after a few days was, I think, very beneficial. And clearly, this group travels around the country and works on these wildfires. So their level of experience was extensive, and they were fun to watch. It was reassuring during a time that was, I know, for a lot of people, very scary. And just to see them operate was something. And there's no doubt their expertise. And then you see that the hot shots, the expertise of those guys that get flown into these fires or driven in, and how they work so quickly to bring them under control. It was an experience that I'll never forget.
Yeah, how critical was that aerial attack in fighting these, especially in those early days?
No doubt, and this was a prevention plan from the DNR and the Forest Service, where they had these planes stationed here, knowing the dry conditions. I believe that it stopped that fire from moving faster and saved a lot more buildings than if they weren't here. That's for sure.
Sheriff, did you ever get to meet Earl in was it Boomer?
I did not. Okay. No, I didn't. But I started following him. He was an interesting guy.
Yeah, he came in. He's just kind of a renegade cowboy kind of a guy that just goes around to the rest of the country and helps out with these aerial firefights, and just so good at what he does. And yeah, definitely follow him on social media if you can.
Interesting. The only thing I didn't like is he dinged Duluth coffee. And I like Duluth coffee.
Wait a second.
Yes.
Oh shoot! He did coffee reviews too while he was there.
He went to trying out coffee, and I heard that he did that on one of his, and I'm like, no, they've got good coffee there, all right. Earl.
Well, yeah, we're gonna have to have him back when just under kind of more fun circumstances, and maybe do a redo on some of that stuff. Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
So how's your crew doing? How is everybody kind of settling back in and getting back to a sense of normal there? It's just been such a whirlwind for so many weeks.
Well, for our staff, yeah, things are back to normal. For those 30 homes that were lost, those families are devastated, and I know working through the insurance process and the grief that comes with that, and our hearts do go out to them. And having met a number of them, it is difficult to talk to them and hear their stories and how this has impacted them. And it's really sad. So that part, it's gonna take a while for them to rebuild what they had, and there'll be some memories and some items that they will never be able to have replaced.
Yeah, and I know there's some efforts being made. Last week, I think it was, the governor was up, and the senators Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar were up there as well. And so the process now starts to begin already, or are we still kind of in kind of recovery and battling the fire mode?
Yeah, so the county, they declared a disaster area. So they'll be looking, obviously we have extensive costs. There's infrastructure costs of roadways that have been damaged and other infrastructure. So the emergency management process, that is of getting the money that we expended reimbursed is in effect, as well as helping those that have suffered the loss. So it's more, the fires now have been, for the most part, they're contained, and we're much less worried about them now. Now it is the recovery stage and helping those that have had these losses.
Yeah, and early on, you and I talked, and we were talking about some folks being reluctant to evacuate. You had put it at 1 in 10. Was saying that they'll kind of hang out. Did you end up having any any trouble around that? Anybody injured or any kind of sort of negative effects of people maybe sticking around?
No, amazingly, no significant injuries. No one was killed, and with the amount of fire and amount of damage, it really is amazing that we didn't have any deaths associated with this. So everybody, those that chose not to evacuate and their houses were burned, got out in time. But yeah, that took up a fair amount of personnel time trying to determine, had they gotten out, where did they go. We assigned, probably had 10 investigators working just on that for a couple days, and was worrisome for many of us.
Yeah.
There was one elderly lady, didn't have a lot of family, were unsure where she went, and it took a lot of personnel time to find her. We're very glad she was okay, but we were really worried that she was lost in the fire.
Oh goodness. Yeah, no, glad to hear that. Yeah, you guys all did an incredible job. It's it's not like you were in a small contained community. I imagine the homes and the properties were sporadically sort of spread out just individually. So that would be really challenging. We talked a little bit about this too when I talked to you about a week or two ago. Any sort of sign with the wildlife? How what happened with some of the wildlife there, and how things have changed a little bit in that area?
Well, it's amazing how quick things regenerate. So a lot of the areas that were charred last week after that rain, they were already beginning to turn green.
Wow.
And the grass that had been charred was, by the end of last week, it was looking a lot more green than it was black in many of the areas that were, that got the sun and got the rain. Under the big canopies of the pines that burned, a little less. But certain areas, I was amazed at how quick the area has already started to regenerate itself. I think of the animals that we saw the most of, it was really the rabbits that were literally all over the roads, trying to get out away from the ash and whatnot. But we didn't really see many other animals. There was a porcupine that had been, hurt a little bit in the fire, but I hadn't heard about any other animals. So I think they were able to move along pretty well. Obviously, there were some nesting areas that we know were, their nests had burned up in the fire, and that was sad. But it was mainly the rabbits that we saw that were part of the daily life there that normally you wouldn't see.
And so talking about some of the folks that, have lost property and homes in some cases, where do they kind of go from here? I mean, do they have, friends and family that they stay with? Are they getting some assistance there, or what's going on with them?
Yeah, Red Cross and United Way have both been working and helping the families. We're not aware of anybody who is that needs help at this time, but certainly if someone is aware of people that need help, we have, these two organizations have been right there on the front lines and trying to help as much as possible. So there is help available. So those that maybe have, if anybody slipped through the cracks, let us know and we will make sure we get them the help they need.
Yeah, and also we talked about community support and people beyond the community who've just been following the story from wherever who may want to be may want to help in some way. What's kind of your best advice for being able to help out right now?
Well, for now, I think the best way is to donate to the fires through the Red Cross or the United Way out of Duluth, both of them. And they're working directly with a lot of the homeowners and property owners to ensure that they're getting what they need on the emergency needs. And longer term, there may be opportunities to help rebuild some homes, help rebuild some of the things that have been lost in the fire. As of now, nothing has been scheduled or there is nothing set for that yet. But I imagine down the road, there'll be opportunities.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you wanted to share or get across to folks? No evacuation areas right now, correct? There's no sort of public service, anything that we need to share?
Correct. One of the remote forest roads is still closed up around Skybo, but for the most part, everything is open again. The resorts in that area rely on tourism and people coming to visit, and pretty much everything's back open. And we would encourage people that if they had plans or have any interest in coming up, that they still pursue those, and that it's safe to come up now.
Right. Maybe go buy lunch at Hugo's and
right. Oh, they were great.
Were huge,
yeah,
right?
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right. Well, Sheriff, thanks so much again for just being available to us during times when you were very, very busy from your squad, just trying to keep everybody updated on what was going on in real time. We really, really appreciate it, and I'm so glad everything has worked out, in the best way possible. Meaning there were no fatalities or serious injuries from these fires. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. We appreciate the coverage and keeping everybody in their thoughts that have suffered loss in this. Thanks.
You bet. Yeah, and it's still not over yet. We'll still need to keep this in the headlines because there's a lot to come that folks are going to need help with. So, all right. Thanks, Sheriff. Take care.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.